What if you could have a career where the opportunities are as vast as our nation, where it's not about mission statements, but a shared mission? At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we go beyond to protect more than borders. From ship to shore, air to ground, cities to local communities, CBP agents and officers are keeping people safe. Join U.S. Customs and Border Protection and go beyond for something far greater than yourself. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain. M.I.P.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson. Make It Plain. Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, time for our favorite segment during the week with the founder of the largest online progressive community, dailycoast.com, also the founder of Civics with a Q and the host of the ever popular podcast, The Brief. Marcos Melitsas is here. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing? I'm on your side of the country now. It's cold over here.
It is. It is very cold. We had snow. The most snow we've had in New York in 2 years was this week.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I enjoyed it, actually.
You enjoyed it. So that's right, because you don't get to see snow. You don't know what's
No. I mean, from Chicago, I've seen enough snow to last a lifetime, but it was beautiful. It was nice, fluffy. People are out there having snowball fights. It was that perfect snow, right? Like nice and wet. You could build snowmen and forts, and so it was a lot of fun.
I'll actually be in Chicago all next week for the Proctor Conference, the Ministers Conference. And Chicago is supposed to be in the 50s next week, in the middle of February, if you can believe it.
This is nuts.
Some people, we're not going to come to conference, Mark, because who goes to Chicago in February? I'm like, I'll be 50 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we'll go now.
It's a different world.
That's good news. So much going on. Let's start with, and we'd love to hear your take on this since this has happened, the horrible Attorney General released the statement of the horrible special prosecutor. I don't think this would have happened with anybody else. And the guy writes that Joe Biden basically doesn't have memory. He's an old guy who's lost his memory. Then the White House adds insult to injury by holding a press conference, and Biden has what normally would have been one of his usual gaffes, but a gaffe coming on the heels of this report by Special Prosecutor Hurt. How, and that is only amplified. And you and I have talked about this in the past, but we've also acknowledged when Biden has rallied and acquitted himself in terms of his acumen. Hell, just a year ago at the State of the Union, he brought the House down. So the question becomes, how bad does this hurt, this latest gaffe, in the context of this special prosecutor non-indictment? How bad does this hurt?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's two ways to look at it. One is that the media is obviously having a field day with it, and they're giving Biden the Hillary Clinton email treatment. They're acting like the fact that he's old is a brand new revelation. You have 3 Republicans in the House committee chairs calling for hearings on the fact that Joe Biden is old. Like we all didn't know this. And then everybody conveniently pretends, including the New York Times, that Donald Trump is pretty much the same age. I could almost see this being the issue if Republicans were running some 45-year-old, 50-year-old young spring chicken. But are we going to really pretend that age is a factor when we have seen Donald Trump confuse Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi repeatedly, confuse Joe Biden with Barack Obama, definitely leader names. Mark, I wouldn't run for office at that level because I would mangle everything. I mangle everything. If I don't have Google in front of me, I'm in trouble. It amazes me that this doesn't happen more often. But are we going to really pretend that his age, we all know how old he is. This is not a big revelation. Mark, I've never shied away from my own criticisms of Joe Biden and his age and his relevancy. And he's turned out to be a far better president objectively than I think anybody expected, and one of the best presidents just in sheer accomplishments during his first term of office. It's going to be an issue because the media needs something to show how fair and balanced they are. And if you're going to criticize Donald Trump for being a fascist, well, by God, you better have something to criticize Joe Biden on. And what are you going to criticize him on? I guess he's old. I guess that's the thing. And it's funny because Republicans seem to have given up on Hunter Biden. I think they're really leaning into he's old. Again, so that's the first step. It's going to be the big narrative this year. I think it's inevitable. That said, everybody knows Joe Biden's old. I mean, it's just a big mind-blowing revelation that the Hillary thing is played into this narrative that she was corrupt, and people did not really understand just how much of a threat Donald Trump was. And there was an assumption he was going to win as well, which allowed people the freedom to be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to support her because they could keep the high horse. There's no way Donald Trump is going to get elected, is he? There's none of that this time around. And so you see it over and over again in every special election. We just had one in George Santos's district in New York, in your backyard, Mark, where Democrats are significantly overperforming Joe Biden's 2020 numbers. It has been a thing since Republicans have been losing since 2018, since Donald Trump was first elected, and the trend continues to be in our favor. Republicans made the election about immigration. Democrats made it about abortion. And we once again overperformed Joe Biden's district numbers. I think it's not going to have an effect electorally because people know what's at stake. They know who the candidates are. There's nothing that could come out about either candidate right now, I think, that shakes the election. Even if Donald Trump's not indicted, he's already indicted. If he's convicted of something criminal, it's not going to change anything. People know he's a criminal and they care or they don't care. People know Joe Biden is old, they care or they don't care. And that table is set. And really what it's going to come down to in November, like it has for, I don't know, lots of cycles in a row, it's going to come down to who turns out to vote. That's it. Nobody's mind is being changed. Who's going to turn out to vote? I don't see Democrats staying home. I don't even see Republicans staying home. But as we saw in 2020, if everybody turns out, we win. And I think that's what's going to happen this year. We got to work for it, though. I don't want anybody getting complacent. But I don't think Joe Biden is old is particularly earth-shattering news to anybody. I don't know, Mark. Maybe you know somebody who was caught was caught by surprise.
No, I think you're right. I think, though, that there is a growing concern and a growing demand even. So now there's this conversation about whether or not he can stay in the race or whether he should. And I thought about this yesterday, you could even probably draw somewhat of a comparison in 1968. You got a few things going on here. You've got people now questioning whether Biden should run, and there's more conversation now about Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer. Why don't we get somebody new? And why are we leapfrogging over Kamala Harris? Coupled with the movement in Michigan to do what was done to Nikki Haley in Nevada. So there's a movement in Michigan for people to vote undecided in the Michigan primary because of Gaza. And the Arab American allied community in Michigan is organizing that. Same thing in 1968. Popular Democratic president. Gaza isn't Vietnam, but a war is war. Lyndon Johnson was hurt. 1968 becomes a brokered convention in the same city of Chicago. So that's interesting. The way history repeats itself. We already know. As much as we know Biden is old, we know that there are going to be demonstrations in Chicago, especially if this Gaza piece continues to play out. Looking at it that way, let me ask you this. Do you see, if it came down to people saying, listen, we can't, or even if it becomes even more clear and prevalent, that he really may not be able to finish? I'm just playing this out. What do we do? What happens there? And what are the options?
When you say finish, are you talking his term or the campaign?
The campaign. If it gets to the point where it's clear he cannot go forward into next fall.
Yeah, I think getting the name of a world leader is not exactly a sign that getting a name of a world leader wrong is not a sign of the kind of cognitive decline that would require him to step aside. There's just nothing that suggests that we're there. If we got to that point, then it's a whole new world, and I have no freaking clue how that gets resolved. But I don't think we're anywhere close to being there. Now, they're both old. They both could have a stroke tomorrow. They could both drop dead tomorrow. They're at that age. The actuary tables don't lie. It would be uncharted territory. And honestly, I have no clue. I have no clue how that would be resolved. I don't know if even the convention rules really state how it would be resolved. So I guess the delegates, whatever delegates have been allocated, it would be a true brokered convention in the true sense of the South. I don't think Joe Biden's in any particular trouble right now, politically, electorally. Gaza is an issue. People will protest, but they protest at every single convention since time immemorial. That's why they had those stupid free speech zones. They're going to corral them in some ugly ass pen. It's going to look ugly. But it's been that way every single convention. There's nothing new. And from a data standpoint, things look pretty stable. And nothing moved. If you look at the numbers, everything is tied in the battleground states like you would expect that they're battlegrounds for a reason. But then you look at actual elections in those states, and Democrats were winning pretty handily. We just won a special election in Pennsylvania handily. Obviously, we won the special election in New York third. The poll said it was a 1-point spread, 1-point game. Like the Democrat had 1-point lead according to New York Daily News. And most of the polls had that kind of thing. He won by 8. So the polls seem to be understating Democratic turnout, Democratic support, sort of a flip. Again, I'm not saying that Joe Biden's winning, saying that the polls are hinky. I think they're having a hard time understanding and capturing the zeitgeist of the moment, but I would say it's pretty much tied. And as far as Joe Biden, you do not swap out an incumbent. That's like the number one rule in politics. Donald Trump almost won in 2020 with a 33% approval rating. He came this close, inches of winning. And you swap anybody out, the chaos it creates, Mark, imagine like the fight between Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and Gretchen Whitmer and people's hurt feelings. Like, people right now, there's no hurt feelings. There are people that are pissed about certain policies, but it's different. They passed over Kamala Harris. And maybe Kamala Harris is not the best candidate. I don't know. Like I would have to do some polling to really get a sense of it. I just don't think there's an appetite for a primary fight months before the actual general election. It would be disastrous for the Democratic Party. There is nothing more powerful than the power of incumbency in an election. It's worth 10 points. Easy. I don't know. I'm making that up, but it's worth a ton. It's a huge advantage. And Donald Trump's going in with sort of his power of incumbency, right? The name recognition, the organization, the supporters, the cult, everything else. You do not give up the power of incumbency in an election. Donald Trump is the strongest candidate they could field right now for that reason. And Joe Biden right now is the strongest candidate we can field for that reason. So from the very beginning, I said, people are like, he should step aside. He's old. If he wanted to, great. You do not give up the power of incumbency without taking a serious hit to your chances of winning the election. And we need to win this election.
Yeah, one of those three groups is going to be offended.
Yeah.
You have an incumbent woman vice president. Would you say? Gretchen Whitmer get that's a very good point you're making. It's dangerous. And frankly, I would argue really the only alternative, if God forbid something mortal were to happen to prevent him from finishing in November, you still got to deal with incumbency.
Yeah.
And you said it before, there's a constitutional system in office. If something happens to him now, she's the president.
Yeah,
that's just not
easy. Yeah.
So you got to do the same thing, I would think.
I think I would agree. You have to go with Kamala. At this late stage, you'd have to go with Kamala.
What's so special about Hero Bread's soft, fluffy, and delicious breads, buns, and tortillas? Hero Bread serves up 0 to 1 grams of net carbs, 5 to 11 grams of protein, and high fiber in every delicious serving. Made with natural ingredients, Hero Bread supports gut health, promotes weight management, and helps maintain blood sugar. Hero also drops other limited edition ultra-low net carb goodies like rich, flaky croissants and buttery brioche slider rolls. Head to hero.co to shop today.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
And two, I'll say this too. I hear the supporters, but I don't necessarily see either Gavin or Gretchen clamoring. And there may be a reason for that too. Sometimes we want people, but those people may not necessarily want to do it, or they may know reasons why they probably shouldn't. If you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it would be so crass if either of them had any hint of trying to jostle for this year. It would just it'd be yucky. They're too smart for that.
So you got that. Speaking of what happened here in New York with the Swazi win, they want to be the party of the border. They wouldn't pass the legislation. And so Swazi was able to run on the legislation. They wouldn't even pass. So for a change, you've got a Democrat actually making a border case against a party that's supposed to be about the border. That could have been about the border, but doesn't want to hand Joe Biden any accomplishment in an election year. It's amazing.
Mark, I've never seen that any party be that self-sabotaging as the Republicans were just now on immigration, because nobody said, hey, Dems. The Dems didn't say, let's tie immigration to this Ukraine, Israel, Gaza aid bill. That wasn't the Democrats' idea. The Republicans wanted to kill Ukraine aid and probably the Gaza provision of the aid, because there's $8 or $9 billion for Gaza in that bill. They wanted to kill that. And they thought by tying immigration to it, that Democrats would be like, poison pill. We ain't going to touch it. Democrats played along. And I'm not happy with that border bill personally. But the fact that it was the Republicans that then shot down the toughest border bill, there's never going to be a tougher border bill than that one, Mark. Never. Because it ain't going to pass on its own. It will never pass on its own. And there is no reason now for Democrats to ever negotiate on that issue, because now they're like, okay, you had your chance. So really, the Republicans that are saying this is our last and best chance are right. That is our last and best chance. There's nothing in there for the dreamers. There's nothing in there for people who've been here for too long, who've been here for a long time and living in gray space, not with legal status. So any future negotiation is going to take those things into consideration. It's going to be a much more balanced bill. This is not a balanced border bill. This is basically giving Republicans what they wanted. And to have Donald Trump just explicitly say, kill it because I need to run on this. Because he's too stupid to even be like dog whistle about it. He just says it straight out. You need to kill this because I need to run on this. And to do it that way basically means that Democrats can now say exactly what happened here in New York is, we had a bill, we had a tough border bill, we negotiated bipartisan, because everybody loves bipartisan. And then it was the Republicans that killed their own border bill. Talk about inoculating yourself, Mark. There's nothing Republicans can say where Democrats don't come back and say, you killed your own bill. We had it. Everything you're saying, shut down the border, all that crap you're saying, it was in there. It was in that bill. And so to me, it's almost a best of all worlds, because that's one of the very few issues that Republicans poll well on. I don't think it's an issue that really drives people to the polls. I don't think anybody really cares that much, unless maybe you live right on the border, because people care about the stuff that deeply impacts them, right? So Republicans get riled up about immigration, about trans kids. Stuff doesn't drive people to the polls. We know what drives people to the polls? Stuff that affects them, like democracy, abortion rights. That stuff affects people more directly. Republicans already are struggling to have any kind of agenda to run on. Mark, I don't know what their lower inflation, lower crime, the border. I think that's literally their campaign. Inflation is tamed. I think best economy in 60 years. People don't feel it. There's a vibes session. People call it the vibes session. Like, it doesn't feel as good as it actually is. And that's something we have to be cognizant of. But generally speaking, the economy, if they couldn't win on the economy in 2022 when inflation was at like 8%, it's going to be tough for them to win in 2 years later when the economy is actually much more relaxed. Inflation is more tame. Crime, they say it's up, but it's not. And again, it's a vibe thing. Fox News will hype up crime here, crime there, Chicago streets, whatever. Again, I don't think it's something that people are truly fully feeling in a way that overcomes the fear for democracy. And then the border. And now they took one of their three tenets out. The border is it's just inoculated Democrats. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. There was no reason. If you were going to kill Ukraine aid, which is what Johnson's trying to do right now in the House, if you were going to kill it, you didn't need to give Democrats such an incredibly potent electoral weapon by negotiating an immigration bill and then killing it. That's one of the craziest things I've seen come out of Congress in in the 20 years I've been doing this.
You're right about that. And then lastly, Biden is reeling from the CC Mexico-Egypt gap. And Donald Trump, normally you're supposed to let your opponent suffer for at least a day or two. Donald Trump couldn't even do that. He comes out and pretty much says he's inviting Russia to attack.
Yeah.
But how, and that kind of refocused people. I was almost like, I'm like, did Biden pay him to do that? They looked at the CC thing. I couldn't believe, is this dude really this crazy? What is the point? And I know you've written about it, but unpack that for us. To mention, if I was really about that life, I wouldn't announce it. If I was really that dude, and frankly, if I'm really a Putin puppet or spy, if I'm Putin, I'm mad. Say, dude, you telling all our secrets. You don't announce that in advance. That's what I'm planning to do. So what in the world is going on there? And I also have a hard time, Marcos, even seeing how that is appealing to his base. Most people in his base probably don't even know what the acronym NATO actually stands for.
The Trump loves people who love him, and he admires strongmen. He always has admired dictators. It's just, he gets more excited talking about hanging out with North Korean dictators, Chinese dictators, Russian dictators than he does about actual democratically elected heads of state of NATO or any country. Like, you always saw that. He loved when he went to Saudi Arabia and they had the big posters of Trump all the way on the highway to the palace, right? You can do that in a totalitarian country in a way that you're not going to do that in going to Paris. So and he doesn't hide it. And what's one of the really fascinating sort of results of this is that you're starting to realize from the MAGA world that they truly do worship totalitarians. Like, they really pine for the strongmen. And you just have Tucker Carlson cavorting all across Moscow, hanging out with Vladimir Putin, talking about how great Moscow is, how much better than any American city Moscow is. Moscow is a concrete, septic, gross, soulless. If he was in St. Petersburg, I would understand. St. Petersburg is, by all indications, a beautiful city. Moscow is not. But he loves strongmen. And you're seeing this from all their right-wing influencers and the Andrew Tates and whatnot. They love their authoritarians. Viktor Orban, Vladimir Putin, Xi in China. And Trump has said so. We're not to make this up. He's literally said that he wished he didn't have to deal with democracy. So what is really disappointing are conservatives who are actually putting their own, ideology ahead of the Constitution and the country. And Mark, serious question. If you're a conservative right now, what about the Biden presidency is so offensive? If Trump's elected, they're going after children. They're trying to expel immigrants. There's lots of reasons for a liberal to be offended, right? Tax cuts for billionaires who don't need the money, already rich enough. What about Biden's presidency would offend ideological conservative? And you're seeing this with the Never Trumpers, right? The Bill Kristols and Applebaums and these sort of conservatives who are supporting Joe Biden, right? Because if you really are honest about yourself, I'm not sure as a conservative, there's much in the last few years of Biden. The economy is doing great. So you can't look at the economy if you're going to be honest about it. Lowest jobs in unemployment rate in 65 years. The stock market's doing great. So you're making money. If you're a conservative, you're making hand over fist. There hasn't been any tax increases. So it's not like you're paying more in taxes. What about the Biden presidency is offensive to a conservative? I'm actually really curious to find out what would be. And I was just in Alaska, and I was doing some research for a project that I'm working on, what happens post post-Trump, because we're so divided partisan-wise. And I met with some Republicans, and they couldn't think of anything that Biden had done that was like deeply offensive to them. And rebuild bridges. Are conservatives against infrastructure? Spending money on rebuilding our roads and bridges? And like I'm being really serious. I'm not being facetious here. It's been very tough to demonize Joe Biden, which is why they're really going on the old thing, right? Because he's not black, so they can't go after him like they did with Obama and peel the racist tropes. He's not a woman, so they can't go after him the way they did with Hillary Clinton and sexist tropes. So it's a very, I don't know, it's a very difficult situation right now for them. And then you have in your candidate, you have Trump, who continuously acts like an a-hole. And it makes it harder for Republicans to rally around him in a way that they used to. We saw this with Nikki Haley's husband. You saw he went after Nikki. Where's Nikki Haley's husband? Look, who's he talking? Where is freaking Melania? First of all,
and leaving her mother's funeral or whoever's funeral it was, getting in a separate car. We all saw that.
Yeah. So are you really going to go after him? But it turns out, obviously, that Nikki Haley's husband is in the National Guard. He's actually serving in the Middle East right now. He's serving his country. And Republicans most of them can't bring themselves to attack him. But a lot of them, fewer of them are defending him. They'll do the whole, I haven't seen the news today. Oh, but they had opinions about Joe Biden's age. But Donald Trump, once again, attacking our men and women in uniform. They look the other way.
Yeah.
It puts them in a really difficult place. And yeah, what you talked about, this whole soliloquy I just made, Joe Biden makes a gaffe, and instead of letting it marinate and letting the media jump all over it, he has to jump because attention has to be me. He can't get past it. That narcissistic desire to always be in the limelight, whatever it looks like, does not really benefit Republicans politically. Definitely doesn't help him down ballot. He just put Lara Trump? Is it Lara? Lana? His sister-in-law or his daughter-in-law is to run the RNC. This is like banana republic stuff, right? You're going to have your zero competent, zero experience family member to run the party. And then she says every single dime is going to be spent on Donald Trump. Keep in mind that a national committee is supposed to create the conditions for everybody to win. Supposed to help all the parties. You're building a field operation. You're building messaging operation that lifts the party, which by default or by extension should, obviously, the president's the most important piece of that, but you're also trying to lift up your Senate and House candidates. They don't care.
No, not at all.
They don't care.
Not at all. It's insane.
What's so special about Hero Bread's soft, fluffy, and delicious breads, buns, and tortillas? Hero Bread serves up 0 to 1 grams of net carbs, 5 to 11 grams of protein, and high fiber in every delicious serving. Made with natural ingredients, Hero Bread supports gut health, promotes weight management, and helps maintain blood sugar. Hero also drops other limited edition ultra-low net carb goodies like rich flaky croissants and buttery brioche slider rolls. Head to hero.co to shop today.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
Marcos, Melissa's folks, check out The Brief, check out dailycoast.com. I'm sure you have already, but if not, stay informed. Also, all their great Ukraine coverage that's taking place, as well as everything else that's going on in the world and in this country. 2024 is going to be an interesting, you got some interesting months.
Absolutely.
So we will stay tuned. Thanks, Marcos.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, It has been made plain.